So 10 years ago, reputable football magazine World Soccer produced a list of the 50 most exciting teenagers in world football, touting the stars of the future who have the most potential to reach the top of the footballing mountain. So 10 years on seems like a good time to take a look at World Soccer's list, so let's pick out a few names from the top 50, looking at where they are now and whether or not they lived up to the hype. Let's start with one they got right, Gareth Bale. The Welshman had only just begun his career at White Hart Lane after joining from Southampton, with Bale still being deployed as a left back a decade ago. His performances for the Saints saw him touted as a future star, but that didn't seem like it was going to happen after a rough start to life in North London, with Bale's exploits at left back seeing him struggle to even win a game. A move up the pitch to left wing saw Bale eventually become Tottenham's main man, with his performances against Inter Milan in 2010 the dawning of Bale's superstardom. Multiple Player of the Year awards in the Premier League saw Bale become a target for Real Madrid, who signed him for £85 million. Injury has disrupted his recent progress at the Bernabeu, but 10 trophies in 4 years shows how much Bale lived up to the hype, and that's before we even talk about his triumphs with the Welsh national team. Up next we've got Macaulay Chrysanthos. The Nigerian striker was a wanted man 10 years ago and was the top scorer at the Under-17 World Cup with 7 goals that year, so it was easy to see why World Soccer had Chrysanthos on the list of exciting teenagers. Sadly, 10 years on and now the 27-year-old has achieved pretty much nothing, having played for Hamburg, Las Palmas, Sivasspor, AEK Athens, Royce and now Lamia in Greece. Next up we're heading back to England with Micah Richards. It all looked rosy for Micah Richards back in 2007. The defender had already broken into the Man City team and had made his England debut, and by the time World Soccer's list of 50 came out, Richards had already captained Man City to make him the club's youngest ever skipper, as he filled in for the absent Richard Dunn. A powerful and athletic right back, Richards eventually lost his place to Pablo Zabaleta and was released in 2015 after a year on loan at Fiorentina. Relegation soon followed with Aston Villa, where Richards remains, nowhere near Steve Bruce's team, probably nursing an injury or something. Also on the list was a 19-year-old Curlon. If you were a gamer in 2007, then you know all about Curlon, unless you were playing Roller Coaster Tycoon. The Brazilian was the man to sign if you were playing Football Manager, LMA or FIFA, becoming famous for a seal dribble where he runs with the ball bouncing on his head, like a seal. 10 years on and that trick doesn't seem to have been too handy because Curlon has had more clubs than you've had hot dinners and he hasn't stayed at them for long either. Curlon's last club was Spartak Trnava in Slovakia, which tells you all you need to know about whether or not he lived up to the hype, because that's probably not how you say it. Another Brazilian youngster on the list was Lilinha. Lilinha is 2 years younger than Curlon, but has achieved just as little as Curlon, despite his youth and seemingly limitless potential. Typical for any Brazilian, Lilinha was dubbed as the next Ronaldinho, just like Curlon was. And while Curlon at least made it to Europe only to fail, Lilinha never got a permanent move to football's most prestigious continent and is now playing in South Korea for Pohang Steelers at the age of 27. Not all of the teenagers on World Soccer's list failed to live up to their billing. Sergio Aguero was at Atletico Madrid 10 years ago, now he's Manchester City's record goal scorer. Alexis Sanchez and Mesut Ozil might be moody at Arsenal, but they've truly lived up to the hype, having been at Udinese and Schalke respectively 10 years ago. Toni Kroos was only 17 10 years ago, but is now one of the best midfielders in the world, while Angel Di Maria has won league titles in Portugal, Spain and France, as well as the Champions League. Theo Walcott is the third current Arsenal player who is on World Soccer's list of 50 most exciting teenagers, having already gone to the 2006 World Cup with England a year earlier, although he didn't play a minute for Sven-Goran Eriksson's side. From apparently being England's brightest new star a decade ago, it's fair to say that the softly spoken Theo didn't live up to the hype, never really making the step up to a top-class Premier League player at Arsenal, with now the Europa League his only chance at first-team football. Henri Saivet is another current Premier League player who was on the list, but he certainly hasn't lived up to the hype, now rarely getting on the bench for Newcastle, a far cry from the days when he was a flying winger who you just had to sign on Football Manager. The other two Premier League residents are Manchester United's Juan Mata and Marouane Fellaini. The Spaniard certainly hasn't disappointed and is maybe overlooked when it comes to Spanish midfielders, considering the golden generation that Mata was part of. As for Fellaini, if throwing elbows as a teenager without an afro made him an exciting talent, then he certainly lives up to the hype, because now he's doing it on a grander stage with much bigger hair, much to the delight of Jose Mourinho. And finally we've got Franco De Santo. 10 years ago Franco De Santo was playing in Chile for Audax Italiano, where his goals earned him a move to Chelsea in 2008, which, to put it long story short, didn't work out. The Argentinian joined Wigan in 2010 and spent 3 years with the Latics, somehow getting an Argentina call-up despite not really setting the goal-scoring trail alight. A move to Germany would see Dessano have his best season ever, scoring 13 goals for Werder Bremen, but has since gone back to his usual self at Schalke. With 3 caps for Argentina at the age of 28, Franco Dessano has done nothing to live up to his new Maradona tagline, or prove why World Soccer named him on the list of 50 most exciting teenagers in 2007. So that's where 15 of the most exciting teenagers in world football from 10 years ago according to World Soccer are now, and whether or not they lived up to the hype. Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to like, share and subscribe.